Yes. Good to have you guys today. If you don't know me yet, my name's Chris. I'm the co-lead pastor here, and it's so good to have you this morning. Hey, I want you to go into your memory vault. You ready to go into your memory vault? You can think of two different types of situations. I want you to think about a time where you maybe first realized that you were in love with someone. So for some of you, you have that story. Think about that, okay? For others, maybe it's a time where you really felt loved by someone. So either the moment that you realized that you were in love with someone, or just a time or a moment that you felt loved by someone. I remember when I still remember to this day, I can picture the moment when I realized that I was falling in love with Robin. I was driving, I was at a stoplight, and one of the best bands of the 80s, 90s, and still today came on. Journey, anyone? Yes, Journey. That's a credit to why, I realized. And a song called "When You Love a Woman" came on. I'm like, oh, I think this is it. I really love her. So, you know what's interesting about love is it can be used in so many different contexts. Adam, you can start putting up the pictures. You could be like, oh, I love Taco Tuesdays, and I love my tacos. I love my taco shop. I love the ocean. I love being at the ocean. I love how it makes me feel. I love the sunset of the ocean. It's just awesome. Some of you I love the Padres, right? Sometimes I love the Padres. We can use it. In one breath, we could say something like that, and then in the next breath, we could say, I love my spouse, right? It's what's interesting about the word love. Even the Bible speaks of 4 different kinds of love. So let's go to the Bible to look at one of the loves it talks about. Very simple verse in 1 John, it says this. It says, God is love. Say that with me. God is love. Notice it doesn't say that God is like love. He is love. This is who he is. The word for love here is the greatest form of love. It's a selfless, sacrificial, and unconditional type of love. And for reference, every verse we look at today with the word love in it is referring to this highest form of love. Just in case you're wondering it, that's what it will be. This type of love is, how many of you heard the song, Hooked on a Feeling? Yeah, right? This is more. This is a love that's more than a feeling. It's an act of will. It doesn't mean that there can't or won't be emotions or feelings, but it's more than that. This is a love, like the video said, this is a love that's committed to the well-being of others. So since God is love, it means that he's selfless, he's sacrificial, and he gives unconditional love. Spiritually speaking, God is committed. He's committed to the well-being of others. And while there are many ways, many ways that God reveals his love to people, the greatest way he revealed his love was through Jesus. Listen in, and you probably don't even need for this verse to go up. You'll see this sign at sports games, at concerts, at other places where there's a big crowd gathered. You could probably say it with me without the words, right? It's the most famous verse in the Bible, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Guys, the greatest evidence of God's love, it's an evidence, is by giving his Son to humanity. See, this is the reason Christmas is so important. Jesus was a physical evidence to the world that God unconditionally loved us by giving Jesus to us. Speaking of Jesus, listen into one of the things he says about love. In John 15, he says this. This is Jesus speaking, and he says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You see, Jesus was letting us know there's no greater way for someone to love someone else than to lay down their life for them. Now, I think a lot of times when we think about laying down our lives, we are thinking about dying for someone, but there's many ways besides dying for someone that you can lay down your life for them. You could serve someone that you know is never going to be able to pay you back. You're just serving them because you want to see their well-being do well. You want to see them loved. You want to see them nurtured and cared for. You can lay down your life when you sacrifice your time or resources for someone else. You can lay down your life when, we talked about this a few weeks ago, when we keep someone else's interest in mind, not just our own interest. It's okay to have our interests, but we're not just keeping our own interests in mind, we're keeping other people's interests in mind as well, and we're loving them in those ways. There's a million little ways that we can lay down our lives for other people. But we know that the ultimate way that someone could lay down their life is by dying for someone. And many of us know this already. Jesus wasn't just brought to earth to say, I'm here, I'm here. It was more than that. He died for humanity. But that said, I want to remind us, or maybe some of you for the first time, I want to read something that just shows and reveals how wild, guys, it's wild how much he loves. Look what it says in Romans 5. It says, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. This is how unconditional God's love is. He didn't die for us when we were his friends. Think about that. He didn't die for us when we were his friends. We were still sinners. He didn't die when we had it all together. We still don't have it all. Raise your hand if you have it all together. Nobody raise your hand. You're like, thank God we're in the church for imperfect people, right? We don't have it all together. He died when we were at our worst. Listen very, very carefully. Unconditional love doesn't mean God approves of everything you do, but it means that he loves you no matter what you do. Big, big difference. In fact, I'm going to say it again. You might need to write that down or type it into your cell phone. Unconditional love does not mean he approves of everything you do, but it does mean he loves you no matter what you do. And now that we've established God's unconditional love for you, let's go over some powerful effects his love can have on our lives when we not just when we hear it, not that when we see it, oh, love, God's love, oh, cool. But when we experience it, when we receive it, when we trust in it, when we believe in it. You know, sometimes we have difficulty receiving his unconditional love because we feel unlovable. I've been there before. I don't know about you. And heck, I talk about God's love all the time. And there's still times where it's hard for me to grasp because I'm inside feeling unlovable. How can God love me? I don't even love myself. But here's what's so powerful. This is the powerful effect that God's love has on us when we receive it. God's love isn't based on what you think of yourself. It's not based on what you think of yourself. Well, I guess since you feel lovable today, I do love you. Or, you know what, you don't feel too lovable on yourself today? Well, I guess I don't love. It's not like that. Listen to this. There's nothing you could do. There's nothing you could have done in your past to make God love you less. There's not a goal you could accomplish today or in your future that will make God love you more. His love for you doesn't change on your worst day, and it doesn't change on your best day. But I get it. Sometimes unconditional love is hard to fathom because we often see it or expressed, or we're used to being loved conditionally. Just to give some examples, someone might love someone like, man, they got so successful, they got so big, man, they have so many different relationships. They have a house over there, and they have this, they have that. They're the top in their career. Man, I really, really love that person. Or, man, I really love this person. They look a certain way, when appearance becomes too important, or they act a certain way. I really love when they do it that way. Or, I love this person. You want to know why I love this person? Because their opinions align with mine. Man, about everything, about life stuff, political stuff, parenting stuff. Man, I really love that person because our opinions align. Or how about this one? Man, I really love this person because they serve people well. What's going on here? They're doing something. There's a condition happening. They're doing something for someone. Now, don't hear me wrong. In and of themselves, none of these things are wrong, but they are conditional types of love, and that's what we're used to. So it's hard to fathom at times that God's love is unconditional. There's zero conditions. Listen to this. There's zero conditions for him to love you. Zero. Let me share a story that has probably one of the greatest things that has helped me understand God's love, unconditional love, just a little bit more. It was the birth of our kids. I loved when we found out that we were pregnant. We were so excited. It was awesome. It was so exciting. The day of, one of our kids actually kept us up the whole night. They would never come. And it was 6-something in the morning when they finally came. I was so excited and so tired, I just dialed a number that I thought was my best friend's wife. And I just, it's 6-something in the morning, and someone says hello, and I'm like, 7 pounds, 13 ounces. And they're like, what? 7 pounds, 13 ounces. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, is this Corey? And they're like, nope. I'm like, okay, well, I just had a kid. And they're like, congratulations. I'm like, well, thank you, 7 pounds, 13 ounces. They were very gracious, even though it was that early in the morning. But guys, when I saw my kids for the first time, when my eyes met theirs, they hadn't done anything. In fact, all they do over the next couple of years is crap at the wrong time, cry at the wrong time, want food at the wrong time. They did nothing. They just existed, and I loved them. An unconditional love. That's the power of unconditional love. There's literally no conditions needed. It has nothing to do with how bad you think you are or how good you wish you were. God doesn't need a condition from you to love you. Did you hear that? God doesn't need a condition from you to love you. Which means nothing has to stop us from receiving God's love or asking Jesus to forgive us with his grace, which makes us right with God. You want to know why it's so important to receive this love from him, not just to hear about it, not that it's this cute on a screen or something that we see out there, but to actually receive it is because there's many benefits that people have when they receive love. For instance, people often have a better emotional well-being when they can confidently receive love from someone. Or someone has a greater self-worth when they receive love. They don't have to prove it and strive for it. I still remember the time where the pastor and I were catching up. It had been a few years since I was on his staff. He was my spiritual father. I was talking to him about life, and he stops me very politely, and he's like, Chris, I still feel like there's times where you're living life where you have something to prove. When we love, when we're able to receive love in a healthy way, we're not striving for it anymore. I'm so thankful that he shared that with me. I didn't even realize that was happening, where I was striving for it, where I was trying to earn it. Some people that receive love in a confident way, they have less stress. And the reason for that is because they feel comfort and stability in that love. Or some people, when they confidently receive love, they have a better chance of growing and healing. Because if they're in an atmosphere of love, they feel like they can make mistakes without feeling judged, and they feel like they can address their wounds without feeling judged and actually heal. You see why it's so important to receive his love? Not just hear about it, not just hear a pastor say it. Because maybe if we received his love by faith, even though it's like, man, I don't even know what unconditional love looks like because all I see is conditional type of love. But maybe if we received his love by faith, we wouldn't believe the lie that we're unlovable. And maybe we'd even learn how to love ourselves well. You know, sometimes another thing that can happen when we're not receiving it from God, sometimes we try to find or give love to others in unhealthy ways. There's many different examples. I'm only going to name a few. But when people-pleasing becomes very unhealthy, and don't misunderstand, God asks us to be pleasing, but we start people-pleasing to a point where the reason we're people-pleasing is because we fear rejection. And that can be a very unhealthy way that we try to give love, is please, 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 because we fear the rejection. Or sometimes, even if it's on accident, I don't think it's always on purpose, of course, maybe for some people, but even on accident, sometimes we can guilt people into loving us. Or sometimes we sacrifice who we are. Remember I talked earlier about some people love because of the way you look or because of the way you act, and sometimes we try to receive love in such a way that we sacrifice who we are. We're so focused on the outward. There's nothing wrong with looking nice. There's nothing wrong with acting kindly. But we're so focused on receiving love that we sacrifice who we are. Or some people, and this stems from our insecurities, people get overly dependent on someone's love. But here's the power of God's love. It can teach us to detect the difference between healthy and unhealthy ways of love. I'll give you a physical example. I remember one time someone confiding in me about their relationship, and this person was sharing that the reason that they were able to detect healthy love and give healthy love, not that they were perfect at it, was because they were loved well by their parents. So because this person experienced love well from their parents, they were able to detect it. Do you see where I'm going with this? When we're able to receive God's unconditional, healthy love, it can teach us the difference between healthy ways to give it and receive it, and unhealthy ways to give it and receive it. Do you see the importance of receiving his love? Maybe if we received it, again, by faith, we wouldn't try to find or give love to others in unhealthy ways, and his love would help us know what healthy love looks like, whether it's receiving it from others or giving it to others. How about this one? This is kind of like the best way I know how to say this, but sometimes we have a hard time receiving this unconditional love because hard circumstances have a way of blinding us, like blinding our eyes to his love. Let me give some scripture, and I think it will make sense to you. Listen to this. It says this in Romans 8. And God knew this. That's why I think he had the writer of Romans named Paul write this, because I think we often ask this question, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? We might not ask that, but we ask something else. Shall trouble? Man, I'm going through a really difficult time. Where's God's love in this? Should hardships, persecution, famine, nakedness, danger, a sword? Isn't that something we do? We're struggling with God's love when we're in a difficult season. God, where are you? Where have you been? And then the writer says, no. In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced. Everybody say convinced. This guy was convinced. It wasn't just something that he read. It wasn't just something like, oh, how cute, Christmas means love. He was convinced because he experienced and received God's love. He was convinced that nothing, neither death nor life, angels, demons, present, the future. Think of all the present and future worries that we have. Nor any powers, governmental powers, corrupt powers, good powers, neither height nor depth. And just in case you can think about anything else in this world that I'm not adding to this list, nothing else in creation, nothing else in creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Jesus. But we get blinded by tough times. All of us, me too. God's telling us that not even tough times can separate us from Jesus' love. But I get it, because I've been there way too many times. When we go through tough times, that's when people often wonder where God's love is during these times. God, do you care? Are you still here? Where are you? Have you forgotten about me? I get why we feel this way. Again, I do because I've been there. But we have to remember that going through a tough time is not an evidence of God's love changing. Now, sometimes God takes away the difficult seasons, but oftentimes his support, his presence can help us through. Again, let me give a physical example I think we'll understand. There have been several difficult seasons in my life. And Robin wasn't able to solve my problem, but her support and presence helped me through. And maybe the same for you. Maybe it's your spouse, a family member, a friend. They couldn't solve your problem, but their support and presence helped you through. It's the same with God. His support, his presence can help us through difficulty. Do you see why it's so important to receive his love? Because maybe if we received it by faith, we wouldn't question his love as often as we go through tough times and instead rely on it to get through the tough time. Did you hear that? Not questioning his love through the tough time, but relying on his love during the tough time. You know, as we start to close, whenever you see, how many of you seen the baby Jesus already in the neighborhood, in the manger? Maybe you have some up on your, whatever, your mantle, whatever, or you've seen a movie that has the baby Jesus in the manger. Yeah, most of us have. Whenever you see the depiction of baby Jesus in a manger, or for that matter, whenever you see the word plastered up everywhere, whether it's Christmas or Valentine's Day or 4th of July, whenever those words come out during other times of the year, let it be a reminder about God's unconditional love for you. which literally means there's no conditions needed for him from you. God, I need to give you a condition. I need to act a certain way, look a certain way. There's no condition needed for him to love you. So my encouragement to you is receive it. By faith, receive it. Just to recap, God's love is stronger than your incapacity to love yourself well. Because oftentimes we don't love ourselves well and we feel very unlovable. But God's love is stronger than your incapacity to love yourself well. Believe that, receive that, rely upon that. While it's good to receive love from others, God's love is stronger and greater than any other love you'll receive from someone else. Receive it, believe it, rely in it. And the one that we just talked about, God's love is greater than the circumstances you're in. Receive it. Rely upon it instead of question it. Rely upon it. God, I'm going to use your support and presence during this tough season. Thank you for being here, because nothing separates me from your love. You know, if you'd like, I'm going to give you the gift of time, because we know this season can just be so rushed for people. If you're comfortable, you don't have to do this, but if you're comfortable closing your eyes, and we say this often around here, there's nothing weird going on here. Closing your eyes just helps you focus. I want you to think about this unconditional love that God has for you. No conditions, guys. Do you know sometimes the best way we can receive it, as you're just sitting there focusing, it's why we often say this at OB1. Slow down. Before you go into that meeting, God, I just need to slow down for a moment and receive your love in this moment. I feel rushed. I feel pressured. I feel manipulated. I'm worried. I'm stressed. Sometimes we don't receive his love simply because we're too busy to stop and ask for it. But it's in those moments where we're like, God, I do have a meeting to get to, or I do have this in a few minutes, but I just want to stop for a moment. I receive your love. I receive your love. In fact, I encourage you to do that right now. Receive his love. You know, with your eyes closed, before Pastor Steve comes out here, I want you to think about the three things we talked about, and there's many more. We just don't have the time. You wouldn't want to hear me speaking until Christmas Eve. I know you need to get places. But maybe there's one of the three where you're like, yeah, I can admit it. And you're not admitting it to feel bad. It's just so that you can be aware of it and give it to God. Yeah, I can admit it. The times that it's hardest for me to receive God's unconditional love is when I feel unlovable. God, help me with that today. I don't want my feelings to dictate receiving your love any longer. Or some of you are like, yeah, I admit it because I don't slow down enough. Because I don't give God the time to receive it, I often try to find it in unhealthy ways in other people. But I don't want to do that anymore. I want to receive God's love in a healthy way so I know how to receive it and give it in healthy ways. But for some of you, you're like, you know what? The thing that typically blinds my eyes, that clouds my heart the most of when I'm wondering if God's love is truly unconditional, if I can truly receive it, is when I go through tough times. And God, I'm asking for your help in that. I don't want my circumstances to dictate how I view your love. Because you tell me that your love is unconditional. There's no condition needed. Before Pastor Steve leads us in song, if you feel comfortable, maybe just picture in this moment God telling you, I love you. Like not the Bible or not the words on the screen, not a pastor saying it. Picture God telling you, I love you unconditionally. There is no condition needed from you for me to love you. Pastor Steve, maybe give him a minute or two and then lead us in the song.